Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
All of our guests today on this Friday brought to you by the Vancouver Giants. Giants look to even up their series against Everett. Game 4 tonight, LEC puck drop, 7 p.m. Silvertips up 2-1. There's some more big WHL news surrounding the Silvertips that hopefully we'll get to a little bit later.
Yes.
Grab your tickets now at vancouvergiants.com/tickets. Meanwhile, Canucks at LA Saturday. And we're joined now to talk about that from The Athletic. Thomas Drance, how are you, sir?
Gentlemen, doing well. Good morning to you both.
Yeah, no problem. Hey, Thomas, this morning we found out that Noah Juulsen is the Canucks nominee for the Masterton Trophy. Do you understand why?
Absolutely. I mean, I had him there as well. You know, this is a first-round draft pick out of Yale Academy out in Abbotsford, out in the Valley,
Yep.
you know, who's overcome some really significant early career injuries that kind of prevented him from establishing himself as an everyday NHL player. He ends up on waivers. He gets claimed by the Florida Panthers. He gets stuck in that vortex that so many players did, and so many Canucks players did who are now having good seasons, Dakota Joshua among them, Archer Seelovs among them, where you were sort of up and down between the American League and the NHL, and you had to quarantine at both spots. Like, you know, we forget that there was a 2-year period basically where a call-up, right, or a loan required like a week alone in a hotel room before it could, you know, be fully implemented. Not to mention the border restrictions between Canadian teams and American teams and the mess that created. And as a result, you had players sitting on taxi squads. You know, Juulsen among them, guys who almost missed like a full year and a half of development, a full year and a half of professional hockey. I mean, they were still playing, they were still practicing, but not a good environment for anybody. And then, you know, ultimately Juulsen ends up in Vancouver. It's kind of the second piece that the Canucks acquired in the Olio Levy trade. And look, he established himself this season as an everyday caliber NHL defenseman, which is, I think, a testament to the focus, the work ethic, the persistence that this young man has shown in you know, really becoming a big part of this team, like a part of this team that I think a lot of fans think is among their 6 best defenders, especially when his penalty killing value is factored in. So congratulations to him. I think it's well deserved. I think he was the right choice and the clear choice to be the Masterton nominee from the Vancouver Canucks for the 2023-24 campaign.
Thomas, 6 games left, 3 at home, 3 on the road. What do you want to see from the team down the stretch here? Because we've seen a lot of up and down play, especially during that 9-game homestand. But what do you need to see from these guys so in game 1, they're ready to go running on all cylinders?
I mean, let me be perfectly honest with you. I don't know that there's much they can show me that's going to make a difference once the puck drops in game 1 of the postseason, right? It feels kind of like we're in that moment. Like it's like there's an exam coming up and it's 60% of this team's grade. And until they sit the exam, it's hard to evaluate. Like, I don't know in this last 20% of the season or so what matters and what doesn't. You know, it makes sense to me that we're seeing all sorts of weird results across the league on an every night basis, right? Great teams falling to middling teams and on and on. And we've experienced that over the past few years, right? Like what you see in the last 20% of the season can be a mirage in a variety of ways. I think the main thing I'd like to see, and it's less about convincing me of anything than it is about just turning some of the anxiety level down among this fan base. You know, this team plays LA on Saturday. They play Vegas on Monday. We've got that game 80 remaining against the Oilers, and they finish the season against the Jets. I think by game 82, both teams could be resting guys, depending on what there is left to play for. So those next 3 games for me loom large against really good teams. You know, I think there's a narrative beginning to build around this team. I don't think it's fair, given how well they've played all season and given how many of the best teams in the league they've defeated, including like Carolina twice, Florida twice, the Rangers in New York, right? But I do think there's this narrative beginning to form around them that they can't win the games against the big teams, the big playoff teams. So, you know, certainly coming out and winning a couple of those, I think would help settle the nerves in this market. And I think that would be a good thing for us. It would be a good thing for the discourse, even if I'm not convinced that it necessarily matters the playoffs are a different beast, gentlemen. There's nothing really that the Canucks have left to prove here down the stretch.
If fans are concerned about Pettersson in the regular season, the expectations for this guy in the playoffs are going to be up tenfold. Your thoughts on his play? I mean, Rutherford said the other day he's not really concerned about Pettersson, but I think 7 games, no points, in 7 of the last 9. Your thoughts on Pettersson's play?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of players on this team that are struggling to score, right? I think my concerns about this team are far more based on their ability to generate good looks 5-on-5, which is something we've seen be like a lagging indicator for them for a while, well beyond the last 10 games, but going back to the All-Star break, frankly, going back before it, gentlemen. So, I kind of look at Pettersson's struggles as being emblematic of a team that, isn't manufacturing enough on the power play, isn't manufacturing enough 5-on-5, isn't really testing goalies, and as a result has kind of had trouble coming back when other teams take the lead early. So, I kind of look at Pettersson and I mean, even since the All-Star break, like he's been on the ice for more 5-on-5 goals than any other Canucks forward since the All-Star break. That's the sort of thing I want to see from this team's top line center. The underlying numbers are still mostly strong. The power play stuff, looks a little wonky to me. It looks like his confidence might not be there with his shot for whatever reason, but. I think we're making a little too much of his struggles, and not that his struggles aren't there, not that he's been at his best, because he clearly hasn't been, but I still think he's playing at the level that you'd hope for, one of your top of the lineup guys to maintain, even during a period where perhaps they're not firing on all cylinders. So I don't know. I mean, I just sort of look at Pettersson as a guy who's not necessarily been revved up to 100 miles per hour, but is still finding ways to cruise along at 80 miles per hour and is still playing well overall, even if he's not playing well given the standard that he's set with, 2.5 completely electric seasons dating back to, well, I guess when the Canucks first hired Bruce Boudreau in December of 2022.
But you can understand that the criticism has been ramped up since the number 11.6 got connected with Elias Pettersson.
I mean, I can, but, he's not on that contract yet. People say stuff like, well, he's an $11.6 million player. It's like, he's not. He's literally not. Like, That's a next season thing. So, no, you know what, Donnie? I don't think I do get it. Really? I really don't. If this is the level that your star player is at when you're freaking out and you're still, like, roundly outscoring the opposition with him on the ice, his line still has the best underlying numbers on a consistent basis against the opposition. They're still the line most likely to generate you a goal 5-on-5. I don't know. Like if that's the low ebb for your star player, that sounds like an $11.5 million guy to me.
Quinn Hughes. One more before we let you go. Arguably the Norris Trophy front runner. In what ways, and he was fabulous from day one, but in what ways has he improved his game?
I think there's so many ways that he's improved his game, Donnie, and it goes well beyond the drag shot. It goes well beyond the shot location stuff that, he put a lot of work in to improve and has. I think a lot of it, too, comes down to the seriousness, the way that he's carried himself, as this team's leader. How badly he wants to win, how much that shows in everything he does, both, in terms of lifestyle, in terms of preparation, in terms of practices, in terms of the games. I'd add this, I mean, in the past, I think there was, in past seasons, Quinn Hughes would play really well. Don't get me wrong. He'd still dictate the tempo of games, but I don't know that he was taking games over the way he has this season. Like, I don't know that I would have called him the primary driver of this team in previous seasons. I would have said he's a vital part of it, but it's like his partnership with Elias Pettersson drives this or what have you. This year, I think that's gone up a level. Like with Hughes on the ice, this team's as dangerous as any in hockey. Without Quinn Hughes on the ice, well, they're just trying not to get hurt, right? Like they've really struggled to score without Hughes, especially at even strength. I think his ability to take things over and set the pace, as we saw in Arizona the other day, is this team's most dynamic overall attribute. Their biggest separating skill are those like lengthy Hughes-Hronek shifts where like all the forwards change while Hughes and Hronek keep cycling. I mean, how many times have the Canucks opened the scoring off a sequence like that, right? It's wild. And then his defensive game's gone up a level too. You know, there is no question. This guy is the best defenseman on the planet right now. He's the only defenseman in the NHL who you'd say is a primary driver on an elite team. That to me matters more than anything, more than a 3-goal difference between him and Cale Makar, more than whether or not a guy on a sub-average NHL PK plays 2 more minutes shorthanded than Hughes does. Like, this guy is the straw that stirs the drink for a team that's going to win the Pacific Division more than likely. He's the best defenseman in hockey. It's really not that close this year. So, yeah, he should win the Norris. And in terms of how he's improved, I think everyone will look at the shot. Everyone should look at the shot. He put a lot of work into figuring out different ways to score this past offseason. But I do think the sort of under the radar part of it too is the way that, you know, sewing that C on his chest, how he rose to that, how he grew into that role over the course of the season and has really become, you know, just a serious competitor in addition to one of the most talented defensemen and one of the most impactful in the world.
This is our 3rd anniversary, Thomas, and we wouldn't.
Congratulations to you, boys.
We wouldn't have lasted this long without your hits. We can't thank you enough.
I think you guys would have pulled it off.
I don't know. You're a big part of it, buddy.
You know, they say there's the parable of the guy who gets stranded on a desert island, right? And he has to build 2 churches, one to pray at and one to not pray at, right? I like to think that's what I do for your show, right? If people didn't hate my hits, they wouldn't like you guys so much.
Well, not everybody likes us, Thomas. Believe me, but they watch. I think. Thanks, buddy.
Cheers, boys.